Our books are roughly the same size because they were cut. There's going to be a little bit of difference between them. They're roughly 4 3/4 wide. I'm just going to write this down. 4.75 by 5 3/4. Or if you're using the Mr. Pens, that's 120 millimeters, which I prefer to say instead of these fractions, and it looks like it's 148 millimeters. I've just got those written there so that I can reference that without having to measure that. So we've got this, and on our book here, I'm going to write on the front of this, on the front cover here. This is going to be glued to our cover stock, so we don't have to worry about seeing this later. I'm writing it in pencil, by the way. If you put it in pen, it'll probably bleed through. 148 millimeters, 120 millimeters. So the first thing that we need to do anytime you're getting ready to do a book, you're going to sketch out, you're going to make a prototype of the book so you get the general sizing of everything that you need to do. The most important aspect of the book is the pages. So those should be completed first before you even think about making a cover for the book. So you put all the pages together, and then you build the book, or the cover and the boxes around those finished parts. So the first part is your pages, then you would put the cover on, and then you would go into, if you're going to put a slipcover box on it, then you would go to that. So it's the step-by-step process, pretty easy to go to do. We're going to be using the book board that you purchase for the course. And one sheet is going to be enough for this. We're going to be able to do the front and the back cover on this with extra to spare. Before we cut into our book board, though, I want you to pick your book board up, a piece of it, and try and bend it one way and then flip it and then try and bend it the other way. You'll notice that it bends easier in one direction. The reason we want to do this is we always want the grain running the direction of the spine of the book, up and down, parallel with the spine. The reason we want that is because any change in humidity or moisture in the air, then you would end up, the book board would tend to buckle or curl. You want it to curl in the same direction as, if it bows at all, you want it to bow in the same direction as the spine. If it was against the spine and it was bowing this way against the spine, then it would put pressure on the back of the book, and the back of the spine of the book would then break apart over time. Whereas if it's bending this way, then it's bending with the pages and away from the spine. It's not putting any pressure on the structure of the book. So again, you just bend it one way and bend it another way. You kind of feel which way is it bending easier. Once you find that, and with ours, it's probably all the same. The tall way is the direction of the grain, and just a bunch of lines up and down so that when you cut these apart, you'll always be able to identify which way it goes. And the worst thing for you to do would be to have your front cover going the right way and then your back cover going the other way, because then that's pulling on that spine in two different directions the whole time. All right. So that book is going to break down. Now, is it going to break down in our lifetime? Maybe not. But we're making some art here. This is going to last 300, 400, 500, 600 years. And so when they look at these books and then your book is bowing out in two different directions and falling apart, you don't want that kind of legacy left behind, do you? No, let's put all let's just make sure that the grain is going in the same direction the whole way. All right. So just to get that out of the way. The next thing we need to do is we need to make some some spacers. And this is just cut from the book board right here. The spacer is 15 millimeters wide, or it is roughly a 1/2 inch wide. So the next step for you to do is to mark in 15 millimeters. Mark in 15 millimeters. Take your straight edge along that. Make sure that you're on a cutting board. And then you're going to cut this chunk off. When you're cutting bookboard, whether you're using an X-Acto knife or if you're using a utility knife, the goal is not to cut through it in one movement for a few reasons. The first reason is that on an X-Acto blade with these delicate blades, you're going to break the tip off of your knife if you try and do it in one pass. The other reason is that after you've got a score going, then that groove acts as a guide for you to continue to do this one at a time. If you use too much pressure, if you're like, I'm going to get through this in one time, and you are pulling really hard and putting a lot of pressure on it, that is more likely when you're going to slip or you're going to go off of your path across your ruler and across your fingers. So keep everything out of the way. Go light and easy pressure so that while you're pulling it down, you don't pull too hard. You're always in control, and that you don't endanger yourself as you're doing that. So I don't know how many times I've done this. 6 times, 7 times. Whoops. I'm not watching while I cut, and I made another groove. So it took about 7, 8, 9, 10 times just to cut that piece off. Keep this. You're going to use this the whole rest of the semester. Now, if you have access to a 3D printer, there are files all over the internet to build your own. This is 15 millimeters right here. That is the same width that we just cut. So I could use this. It's much more durable than this and won't break down after time. Plus the glue on this I can wipe off. We're going to use these. This is a corner. We're going to use this when we put our bookbinding on. But if you have access to a 3D printer, then or you can always, I found this set on Amazon because I wanted to reverse engineer it for my 3D printer. So I bought it from someone, and then I'm going to go make my own off of that. So you can buy these on Amazon, Etsy, all over the place. There's all kinds of places for you to buy bookbinding material. But for now, we're just going to use this. All right, once you have that cut, the next thing for you to do is to remember how big your book is, right? I could measure this out because I've got the measurements written down on my paper. So I would be able to, so I could measure it out if I wanted to. Or if I am measurement challenged, which I am, then what I do is I end up putting my book down onto my book board. Notice that the grain is going up and down. It's going to be parallel to the spine. Actually going to pull all those pages off just so I have one page in the way right here. I'm going to use that as my, right there's my fold line right on the edge. Match that up at the top and the bottom. I'm going to trace that all the way around. So I have a mark right here, a mark right there. That is the size of my book. So this is these are the sizes of my book. But I need my cover needs to be just a little bit bigger than my book. So I have my marks set here, but I need to go just a little bit further than that. So I'm looking to go, this is approximately a 1/4 inch right here. That's what this is. It's 5 millimeters. I want to, because I want an 1/8 of an inch border all the way around. So here is my book, the pages. I need my book board to be just a little bit bigger all the way around. I need it to be an 1/8 of an inch bigger than my book, or roughly 2.5 millimeters. So I'm going to, where I have my line right here, because I'm not going to add it all the way around, I'm going to add double to this side, which is 5 millimeters. And I'm going to add 5 millimeters down here. Does that make sense? I'm adding 5 millimeters to onto the left side and 5 millimeters to the bottom, because then when I put it down and I center it completely, then it's just going to be 2.5 millimeters on each side. So I'm going to I have a handy dandy tool that is perfectly fit for 5 millimeters. And I'm just going to trace that line. And I'm going to move it around here, and I'm going to trace that line. I could have used my ruler and measured that out. So I have 5 millimeters extra on all those sides, or on just 2 sides. Divide that in half. That gives me the 2.5 millimeters that I need on both sides. Do I need to go back over that? I'm sorry? Yes? There was a yes? All right, so I measured my book. It's 120 millimeters wide and it's 148 millimeters tall. I put that page up here in the corner and I traced it around so I could get the exact size of it. I could have measured it, but since I have the page right here, why not just trace it? So I traced it. Then I went out 5 extra millimeters from that spot. And I traced a line that went down the edge. For me, it's the right side, and then across the bottom. The reason I did 5 millimeters is because when I place this right in the middle like this, then I'm just going to have a hangover of about 2 millimeters on the top, the bottom, and the left and the right sides. So trust with me on this one for now. You trace your page. Add 5 millimeters around, or 1/4 inch all the way around, and then cut that piece out. I'm actually going to cut all the way across my board just because it's a little easier to do than to stop in the middle of this. So I'm going to cut all the way across using that outline, that outside line that I just created, which is going to make my cover 2.5 millimeters wider and taller on each side. Put that off to the side. And then pull this down. And then, because I did this looks like I'm going to get a nice, I'll be able to get both of my covers off the top part of this bookboard. That's my extra. So here's my bookboard. When I put my book down right here in the middle of this, that, get it perfectly centered. I have just the tiniest amount of overhang from the cover the whole way around. You can kind of see this right through here and there, all the way around. That will help to protect the pages. If it gets bigger than that 1/8 of an inch hangover or the 2 millimeters, then it becomes a little clunky and it feels weird in your hand because the pages are sitting too far deep. So you don't want to get that too big. I've got this perfect template for a cover now. So all I need to do is lay it on top of, oops, it's not quite big enough. So I got to come down to this other piece, lay it down here, trace that cover now, and make those cuts. So now you've got an exact copy of it. So you can take a look at mine up there. I just used after I cut that one out, I laid it down on top. And they are both exactly the same. Now I've got one for the front cover, and I've got one for the back cover. And then I've got two little pieces left over. But these two chunks are good size. These could be made into smaller books. These are my leftover pieces from that one sheet. Save those. At some point you may decide you want to make a small book. And then you've got the materials. For those of you who have all of those cut out, now is the time where if you have sandpaper or an emery board, this is the time to get it out. I have some 180 grit sandpaper. You'll see that there are, because you've cut through many times and many layers of this, that you may have these strands that are out on the edge. Just to finish that off a little bit, just a very soft sanding to smooth off those edges. It's called breaking the corners so that they're not quite so harsh. Do that on both sides, the front and the back. Just trying to stay as close to the edge as possible. You don't have to sand down the middle of it. We're just looking to clean up those edges just a little bit. Just a light, very light sanding on those corners, just to break those down just a tiny bit. If you have sandpaper, what I'm doing right here, Ty, is I'm just, when you cut through, there's strands that might be left over. And so instead of pulling those off, just a very light sanding on that. That'll break all of those edges down so the edges aren't quite so sharp. And then just a very light sand on the on those corners to break those corners down just a little bit. Okay, let's get started with the book cloth. So we're running into a space now where we need to be careful with the materials. The glue that we're using, this is PVA glue. It is pH balanced. It is acid free. It is archival. We're going, for the most part, we're going to be using the glue full strength. You can water down this glue as much as 50% and give yourself a lot of working time with it. Oops. I don't know why that turned off on me. But we're going to be using it full strength. It'll allow us to work through this pretty quickly. But because it's full strength, if you get this glue on your book cloth, it won't wash out. It'll look, and that's why we're not using great materials right now. We're trying to use things that aren't as precious so that if we make a mistake, it's okay. But anytime you use this glue, You're going to want to make sure that you have a paper towel with you so that you can wipe your fingers, and you want to make sure that you keep your work surface completely clean of glue. All right. Now, a few things to note as we're working through here. You've got your book cloth, and then you have the front side, and then you have the backing on this. I'm going to work on the backing because it's going to be a little easier for me to see, for me to demonstrate, and then also to see the pencil lines and everything else that I am going to draw on this. The first thing for me to do is to put my book cloth, or put my book board down, and then I am just going to simply trace my book, that hardcover. I'm just going to trace all the way around it. I'm only doing one at a time right now. So this is exactly the same size as my book, but you understand that we need more than the exact same size because we've got to glue it, wrap it around. So we need extra. It's a general rule of thumb in bookbinding that it's a 1/2 inch or 15 millimeters all the way around. So I've got, you can use your ruler to measure out a 1/2 inch or 15 millimeters and draw that extra square all the way around it. I'm sorry, don't use your ruler because you made this handy dandy measurement tool right here, which is that 15 millimeters or that 1/2 inch. You lay it down at the edge of your paper, or I'm sorry, the edge of the line of your cover, and you just trace it all the way around. All right. So now you've got the square in the middle, or the rectangle in the middle, which is your book board, and then you have this 1/2 inch or 15 millimeter allowance around the outside, which then will get wrapped around in just in a little bit here. Then I'm going to move my cover down a little bit further. I'm going to trace it and repeat those steps. Ooh, I got pretty close to the edge here. Pull that up just a little bit. And as you're tracing around the book board, you don't have to follow all the way around the corners. You just need the edges, the sides, so that you can line it up at the top, the bottom, the left, and the right. Okay, does anyone need me to come by and help out with that? So I will put this video in its unedited glory right after class. I'll upload it to it at some point here before it gets too late in the afternoon, so you can come back and take a look at it. And then I'll edit it at some point and put it up. But for now, just know that at the 30-minute mark is about where we start with the book cloth. So if you need to come back and take a look, like what was the book cloth thing again, you can get to it. I've got my marks on this paper, so I'm just going to cut across those lines. I can use my scissors, or I can use my ruler and X-Acto knife to cut through all of that. It just depends on how finicky your fabric is. My scissors are not great scissors for cutting through fabric, so I'm going to use a knife to cut through that, separate those. I'm going to cut off all of that extra book cloth that is on the outside, that's outside that second line that I drew around. So you can cut both of those out to begin with. And then that's the glue, that's where the adhesive gets stuck to it. Okay, so I'm going to, you can see that I have both of mine cut already. I've got this nice rectangle. These things will just get glued over the edges like that. I'm going to set this one aside for now and just focus on this one. So a couple things that I want to do with this, just kind of in preparation, is I've got my glue ready to go. I have a brush ready to go. I'm going to put glue on the book board here. I'm going to spread it around, and then I'm going to flip this over and match it up to the lines that I have drawn here. Just very carefully laying it down. And then once I have it down here, then I can turn it over and then press it. So just kind of watch what I'm doing here to begin with so that you get an idea of approximately how much glue you're going to need on this. So I'm going to just, and you have a few minutes of working time on this, but as soon as you start spreading it out, it will, because it has an increased surface area, it will start to dry out faster. So I'm just coming up and down. I'm going to hit those corners. I want to make sure the entire thing has glue on it. Now notice that I am working on my book cloth, but my book cloth is turned upside down. So any glue I get out here is fine. It's not going to be on the front of it. So that's what I'm looking at right now. And I've got glue on my fingers, so I want to make sure that I have that all cleaned off before I flip this over. And then make sure that there isn't any glue on your workspace. So you flip it over, match it to your lines. Press down on your corners. And then before you turn it over, I got more glue on my fingers. So I want to make sure that I don't transfer that to the front side of this. So I'm going to flip it over. Use my bone folder. Medium to medium heavy pressure on the front, and then it's more or less glued down at that point. So go ahead and do that first one. I'm going to do both of these at this, so I'll just walk through this one more time. I've got my book board. Doesn't matter if your pencil lines are facing up or down, the pencil lines won't come through. If you used ink on this, then you would want to make sure that whichever way, first of all, don't ever use ink. But if you did use ink, that wherever this is going to be positioned, that you put that so that it's going to be covered by the thickest amount of fabric or paper so that it doesn't, so that the ink doesn't come through. I used a little too much glue on this one, it looks like. Got a little thick. I want to make sure that I have all those corners set.
And you're putting it on the white piece of paper, which is mulberry?
Yeah, so the book cloth is underneath it, then there's the heat and bond, and then the mulberry paper was ironed to the heat and bond again, and so the paper that you see, this white paper, on the top, or that you're seeing right now, is the mulberry paper.
Which is on the heating on, which is on the
Right.
block.
Yep. And then after you get that glued down, flip it over and burnish it with your bone folder to make sure that it is all stuck to that. Now, after you've turned it over, you take a look at mine, you can see that there's glue on my surface. Wiping it off real quick takes care of most of that because it's such a thin layer that it dries fast. If I was worried about it, then what I would end up doing is taking another piece of paper and laying it on my work surface so that I wouldn't get that glue on there. Okay, so I've got a couple fun tools that from these 3D printed tools that help out in this next instance. One, we need to trim the corners. So I've got this nice corner piece right here, and I've got this little corner piece right here, which gives me that exact 45-degree angle all the way across my edges. Because I am fastidious that way, that I want to make sure that those are cut all the way across. But just the important thing to know is that the width of those is the same width as your book board. So for you right now, what you're going to do is you're going to lay this measuring board that you created in roughly a 45-degree angle. Make it as close as you can, but you don't have to worry about it too much. Use your pencil and just draw across that. There are many YouTube videos out there of bookbinders, and most of those bookbinders just eyeball it. They come in with their scissor and they cut, leaving that 2 millimeter spacing on the corner. The reason we're cutting these corners is because it is actually, then it's too much fabric when we fold it over, and so it causes a bunching of the fabric in our corners. So once you have those, then all you have to do is just cut across that line. Like that, you cut all 4 of those corners off. On this one, I'm just going to use this white tool here just to demo how that works. It has a perfect 90-degree angle there, corner. And then I can cut across those lines. And my scissors are terrible at that, so I'm just going to use a straight edge. See how I can do this. Maybe I can't use a straight edge. There we go.
be on my Kindle, like,
Okay. The next step that I want you to consider while you're making this is when you're putting the book cover on your books, that you want to do the top and the bottom first. The reason that you want to do the top and the bottom first is because when that edge gets folded in like this, when it's sitting on a shelf, then it looks like it's it's completely covered in fabric. Whereas if I have this first and then these folded down over the sides, then at the tops and the bottoms, you'll be able to see this edge poking out over the top of it.
Can we do an inline inside the book cover instead of it showing the chipboard? We just have like another piece of fabric inside there.
Right here?
Yeah.
Okay. That's what we will be doing that.
Okay.
Right, to cover this up so that you can't see it.
But right now we're just like baby steps.
We're doing this, but then this prototype that you just made, this is going to get glued in on top of it and we'll cover everything up. Okay. So to do this, it's fairly easy. If you've got the squirt bottle type glue, then you can just put a very thin bead of glue right along the edge. And then make sure that is spread out there and start painting out from the edge, or from the inside, paint out towards the edge to spread that glue. I'm just going to I've got a little bit extra glue on my brush, so I'm going to hit this. Now, I've just glued on this paper, so I need to move this over so I don't put that glue on there. The easiest way to do this is just to pivot your bookboard, your cover, press down. Notice that I've got some glue right here too, so you want to make sure that you don't lay it down, and then wipe all of that extra glue off. Wiping away from the edge so that you don't smear the glue up onto your book cloth. I'm going to flip this over so I can lay this down. See how I'm pulling away? Okay. Now, next one. I want to make sure that there's glue on this edge of the bookboard right here. So when I wrap this around, it's actually getting glued to that edge right along there. I'm going to move this over here so that I can okay, and then come back to it, bend it up. I'm going to pull it down this way so I don't get extra glue on my paper. I'm going to use my bone folder this time. And press down hard. And you'll notice that there is glue coming out. It's spreading the glue down and around all the way down to the bottom. This is really important right here that you take the time while you're doing this and clean your tools off after you're doing that, so that, because you likely end up getting glue on your bone folder and you don't want to spread that around accidentally. Once you get to that point, pull that down. Now that little tiny 2 millimeter space that we had on the end, this is where we'll pull that in just a tiny bit, and I'm going to use just the red tip on my brush. I've got that nice little paddle on it. Pull that in, pull that in. And that's all the fabric we need right there. Those tiny little pieces folded over. That's all we need in order to cover up that corner. And then just repeat the process. Glue. I'm going to put a little extra glue here. And then pull that out.
On the next one, can I see you did the corners again?
Yes. Fold it over, run my bone folder along the edge so that I get a nice crease in that fabric. And burnish it down. Again, if I'm pushing like this and I see just a small bead of glue go out from under the edge, then I know that I used enough glue. If it's a big glop of glue, then you can start training yourself to use a little less. If you're running and burnishing down this edge and no glue is coming out, it's likely you're not using enough glue. So I'm just going to pull that glue down and away from the edge. All right, so just to repeat on this one. So I've got, if I don't have enough, like the glue has dried over here in this corner already, so I'm just going to put a little bit of glue in that edge where I'm going to do that fold over. Just going to pull that in and press it down. Just folding it over just a little bit. It is the tiniest amount of fold, but that's all we need. Push it down and fold it in. If you cut too close to the edge, then you'll end up having an exposed corner. You'll be able to see the bookboard. And then if you have too much there, then it's going to be bulky on that corner. Okay, so I'm pulling that out. And then sit down. And I put glue on my paper here, so I'm going to get a new, just replace that out. After you've glued that whole cover on, the last thing that you need to do is just run your bone folder over that corner to help break it just a little bit, so it's a little softer corner. And then I'm just pulling it back in and making sure everything is tight. I'll send this around so you can take a look at it. Look at the corners and the miters on all that. Just be careful not to drop it into glue on your table. I appreciate that. Or deface it in any other way, I suppose. So I'm going to continue to do this on this one here too. So I'll get this one glued on, and then I'll be able to go into how to attach the covers to your book as well. All right, top and bottom first of all. I'm going to go work a little faster here so I can put glue on both sides while I'm working.
That was. Because I was just like one day I was like.
Carl's is
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, where's that book cover? All right, the last step on this. I'm sorry, I'm moving a little fast here. We're rolling up to our last 15 minutes in class. I want to show you this process, and then you'll be ready to go. So whether you get it finished here today, or you take it home. So this is where our measurements came in. We used this. We gave it an extra 2.5 millimeters all the way around. So when this gets laid down on top of it and it's perfectly centered, look at how beautiful that looks. Just like, oh, so nice. It looks like it was professionally done somewhere because you've got all these nice edges the whole way around. Now, to do this, similar to the book cloth, I'm going to put some glue in the middle here. And then I'm going to spread this out, fill in this whole space. Make sure that that's good and coated. And then I need a little more glue so that I can pull some of this out. I'm going to come right up here on my cloth about halfway out. The reason I'm doing halfway instead of all the way out is that I know that when I burnish this, some of that glue is going to get squished out. And I don't want that glue to squish out onto into a space where I can see it. It's fine if it squishes out onto the paper. Oops. And then I went and put a brush spot right there. Get rid of that real quick. So I'm only coming about halfway out onto the book cloth itself. All right. So when I burnish it, I will be squishing glue out into that space. and I want it to be done squishing out by the time I get to that edge. So I'm going to take this now, carefully, let me turn it this way so it shows up a little better. Line that up. Now I can't see this backside because the pages are in the way, but I can see that this edge and this edge and this edge are all the same width all the way around. Press down. Then come back in with your burnisher. Start from the back, from the folded edge, and start working your way towards the front edge of the book. This is just pushing that glue forward and underneath the paper. Carefully come up to the edges. Carefully up to the edges. I'm going to just burnish this corner a little bit. It feels a little loose. Okay. And there we go. There's the cover for that. I'll repeat it one more time on this side. Myself a fair amount of glue this time. See if I can better gauge what I need. And I'm just putting glue about halfway up on that book cloth. Kind of eyeballing it, because I know that I'm going to be covering a lot of that up to the last 2 millimeters on each side, which is a very small gap. So make sure that you have all of that book board in there has glue on it, so that your pages stick to it well. Set that aside, and the same thing. You bring this in. I don't set it down yet on the glue until I can see that I've got equal alignment the whole way around, all of the edges. I actually like this side better. The reason I'm switching around is I got a little too short on my corner right here. So part of that corner is showing, and I don't want that to show. Okay, there we go. And then again, just start burnishing it to get a good adhesion with your glue. I'm just going inside the book cloth on this part right here. Get it attached to the book board nice and tight. And then I'll start gluing the paper to the book cloth. There it is.
Wow. Yeah.
All right.
Revel in it.
Okay, so